All right, today we have one of the probably the most interesting person in recruiting right now. One of the craziest stories, one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard, and I can't wait to have this conversation and to get to know him better. For you to get to know him better, his story has taken the recruiting world by storm ever since he was on Benjamin Mena's Elite Recruiter podcast, and I knew Ben was like, "You have to talk to Pete." So here I am. I'm talking to Pete. Pete, what's going on, man?
Hey, Clark, how's it going, buddy?
Good, man. I'm so pumped to do this with you and obviously dive into some recruiting stuff, but also just some personal stuff and probably get a little raw with it because both of us aren't afraid to throw it all on the table in a
For
sense.
sure.
So there's so many different ways we can kind of spin this and kind of go. So we'll cover some recruiting, we'll cover some life, getting into recruiting, all that good stuff. So I guess we can just start with where you're at right now, right? Talk to me about what you do with your firm, your agency, what you guys specialize in, and we'll start from there.
Sure. Titan Placement Group,
Yeah,
my company. I have two business partners. We are a perm placement healthcare recruiting company. And our specialty is federally qualified health centers, community nonprofits, and more importantly, within that space, we do a large portion of mental behavioral health. Anything licensed therapist, anything in that arena is our niche. That's what we're really, really good at.
and one of your co-founders, Justin, was actually on this podcast last October. We had an awesome discussion, and I know one of the things that impressed me so much. You guys just hustle and call, but you do it strategically. So I definitely want to get into that piece of it because there's so much recruiters could learn from, I think, the way you guys plan and execute. It's super powerful. Uh, how how did Titan placement kind of come to be, right? And how did you end up picking this niche?
Sure. Justin and I have worked together in one capacity or another for 6 years, maybe. The first firm that I was with, where I cut my teeth, he was there. Right. So that was my first introduction with him. And then we worked together for about a year. And then that company dissolved. Right. And then I took a 1 year hiatus from recruiting. A couple guys from that original company went off and did their own thing. And then I joined them at some point. And then, you know how recruiting works, man. Justin Belante, is the hottest thing on the block, so they made it their mission to go out and get him. And they were successful. So Justin and I have been working together now for probably the last 4 years. In one company, in the last company that we were with, and now with Titan Placement Group.
Time placement. You guys started that, was it October
October,
2020?
yeah. This October will be 2 years. We're 19 months in right now.
And you mentioned you had a 6 month non compete, right? You guys went about it kind of the completely ethical way.
We
From
did, and part of it was fear based,
yeah,
right? Because the company, the guy that was running the company, really drilled down. You guys are under a non compete. If you want to leave, fine. But there's a 6 month non compete, an additional 6 month non solicit. And Justin and I, and then our other partner Gary, who's with us now, we were all three together at this last company. And we're just really like-minded in certain ways, and one of those ways is we're just ethical, right? We just didn't want to go out and break the non-compete and then fight this thing out in court and let the chips fall where they may, type of thing. So part of it, we were lucky, man. The three of us had done really, really well with that last company. We had money in the bank, three of us individually. We had enough to be able to sit out for 6 months, and still get the bills paid and then fund Titan placement group and, get the office space and get the computers and all the databases, everything else that comes with launching, your own first startup recruiting company. And so we were able to do that.
And so you did a lot of planning, right? I know in that time you planned a lot for kind of the business, the operations. Like what went into that? Because we have a lot of people listening that might be looking to start their own or leave an agency to start their own. Uh, like what goes into planning, for 6 months? Like what are you looking at?
Yeah, it was actually a lot, so the one thing that we committed to like a week after the three of us walked into our company and resigned all at the same time on a Monday, that was a big shakeup. But what we did is we met at my house, right, and we made a commitment to each other, right, that for the period of 6 months we were going to meet together twice a week on Tuesdays and on Thursdays from 9 o'clock in the morning to noon, right? And we were going to rotate one week. It would be at my house, and then Gary and Justin's. And so the reason that we did that is we were fully aware that there's a small opportunity in that 6 month window that if we don't stay connected, right, something could happen, right? Maybe something else pops up, or maybe somebody loses interest, and who knows, a number of things. So we were so committed to each other, and we understood that we didn't want that to happen. So that was the first thing that we did, was we did that for 6 months, right? And what we did initially was we would talk about, I think the biggest thing that we did is we started to put our training manual together, and that took a lot of work. Right. And I think what surprised us the most is, even though, I've been in this recruiting space for a really long time, Justin, at this point was 10 or 11 years in, Gary had 8, had a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. It actually came down to putting pen to paper and putting together a training manual. It was a lot of work. Right. And so a lot of that time was just writing things down. Like I could sit here with you right now and off the top of my head tell you the A to Z,
Yeah.
process of between client acquisition and how to walk a candidate through the process. But to actually put all that stuff on a piece of paper, get it all printed out, and then put it into a binder in chronological order was a lot.
And it makes it real,
It
right?
does.
It makes it real. And I bring this up because a lot of people want it or think it can be easy, right? So you have 6 months. You put in your notice. You have 6 months, 2 days a week, 3 hours, right? You're working together. You're planning it out. You're writing it down, which is lessons that I have learned that I'm actually really starting to do myself this summer. I'm really taking a step back. I shut down a lot of my calendar to do a lot of what you're doing. I'm almost 3 years into business, and I'm doing this as a like, hey, I need to slow this thing down and be like, what do I actually have here? Right.
Yeah.
And where it will just, and it's so important to do pre-business. I'm sure you probably do it currently, right, in your business. Like I'm sure you, whether quarterly or twice a year or shoot monthly or weekly, right? I'm sure you guys, I think I heard you guys still, I know you meet up and go on runs, right? Like
Yeah.
twice a week together in the morning. Like it's so important to just be intentional and not just always new client, new client, new client, but like what is this business? How do we plan for success? And writing these things down. So then you're 6 months in, and then what did day one look like after
Yeah.
all this planning?
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. So we had obviously acquired our first little office space, 800
yeah,
square foot. It was Justin, Gary, and I. And the first thing that we did is we went out. We bought a big white 6x8 whiteboard from Home Depot. Dry erase board. We put that thing up on the wall. And I think for the first day, we really didn't do any type of work. What we did was we brainstormed through a lot of clients that we kind of knew, were aware of, a lot of just going back on Indeed, running through job ads, see who's out there. And so we wrote out a list of 300 companies that we wanted to target, that we were allowed to target, right? Because we were still under the 6 month non-solicit. right? So there was a bunch of clients that we could not touch. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't venture into that area whatsoever. So first day was just like getting all of these companies on the whiteboard. So when we walked into the office every day with all the other things that were going on with the new business, sometimes it's easy to get distracted. We wanted this thing on the wall where the three of us could see it at any point during the day, and we just knew what was going to happen.
I love it. And for digital recruiter listeners, especially if you listen to a few episodes, I mean, that's music to my ears, the 300 companies. I'm automatically thinking, okay, let's create a list in Sales Navigator and then target them, find get hiring managers, set a Dripify campaign going so I can build those connections and then write content and post content directly to those companies, wherever the overlap is, right, with that account list, which for you obviously is in healthcare, those nonprofits, federally qualified health centers. So it's like it's magic, right? It's like simple, but you just got to do it. Now, you can't skip that step. It's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in 3 years almost of having digital recruiter is how much time I tell people to put once we save them time with automation and content, put that time back into your prospecting and your sourcing.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
where it goes back to. Because the more and more you refine that, the easier everything else is. Your messaging is better, all that, just that domino effect. I just had to throw that out there, and I'm
No,
sure,
you're right on,
you're
man.
like you did all those things, but it's like, ooh. So I love that. Okay,
Well,
and
the
then
recruiting space, I mean, it's if you don't plan, right? It has been proven time and time again. If you don't plan, right, it is so easy to get distracted, right? Go down the proverbial rabbit hole, right, where it feels like you're doing something that's revenue generating activity, and then before you know it, like your head pops up like out of the computer, and you are trying to figure out something about somebody, about a company that really doesn't even matter at that time, and like 45 minutes have went by. It happens very, very easily in this business.
it happens in recruiting. I can testify it happens in the coaching business. I hit a little bit of that last month. I was like, what am I doing? Like, and it might sound funny to people listening because I post and all that stuff all the time, but I realized I wasn't, and like it was almost like I wasn't energized anymore. Even though it's funny, the client results have never been better, but my energy was, and I was like, what is going on? Number one, I wasn't working out, so I got back into boxing, and that helped with the clarity immediately. So that's why I love that you guys run together. But it's just like, oh, I didn't take time to really like plan, right, and to replan and kind of retarget and kind of sit with that. It's so important, and it's so funny how the simplest answers start being like so obvious once you like start to be intentional with your time and just kind of slow things down. Like all the solutions started appearing, like all of
That
the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
you are 100% dead on. Like I often tell, my recruiters, like there's at the end of the day, like what we try to do is what I try to convey to my team is that, because we work from 8:30 to 5, at 4:15, stop working, right? Stop working. Whether you're keeping your note, how, and everybody keeps notes and plans a different way. But I tell everybody to stop working and start to plan tomorrow, right? And figure out, because like we do a couple different things, right? But the one thing that I allow them to do, and they could spin off from a little bit if when they feel like they're ready. But when we're doing client acquisition, right? It's a huge part of any recruiting company, right? And so what I tell them to do is find, at the end of the day, find 10 new companies that you think that you would like to do business with, and just put those 10 companies on the list for tomorrow, right? You don't have to know the person, the number, none of that information. Just put the company name. And then underneath that, what positions, what job orders are you going to work on? Right? Because you can only work on, depending on how many candidates are in play or already in the ATS, and if you have to go source a bunch, you can only really work on maybe 2 depending on the variables, maybe 3, and that's really kind of pushing it. But put down the job orders that you want to work on, because the one thing that we really, really stress is it's never failed us, right? Is call, text, and email. Like, you have to call the candidate every single day, right? You have to send them a text message, right? And that you have to send them an email, right? Those are your 3 points of contact, right? But what happens, and it makes it so much easier, because I know from experience that once I get that list together, like, I can walk away from my desk at the end of the day, and I feel so refreshed, because I know that when I come back in, what I think what happens a lot with maybe even some seasoned recruiters and some beginning recruiters, is what happens is you come into work the next day, and you just think, I'll just go to work, right? But that never happens, because there's so many things to do. If you don't have it on a piece of paper, on a notepad, in your ATS system, if you don't have it somewhere, then you just find yourself scrambling right out of the gate. And then it's, you look up at the clock, it's lunchtime, you haven't done anything, right? And you're thinking, what the heck just happened? It was because we didn't plan.
Yeah. It's so true. And the writing it down piece. I know I've already said it, and I've reinforced it a few times already in 15 minutes, but it's so important. It's lessons I'm relearning. That's why I always say connect. For my version, digital recruiter version, is connect, call, and content, right? You can connect with people every day. You use Dripify, right? Plan out the right people, your ICP, get that campaign going. You could post content every day, and that's impressions, that's people building your brand. Right? You can always do that, and that can be running every day as a recruiter. And then you can always be on the phones. And if it's like, well, I can't get clients, well, talk to the candidates that your clients might want, right? Like, it's recruiting is a free service for candidates that they'll get on the phone with you. You can do that every day. You can always at least doing that. So we set up that system, and then it's like, well, now what? And that's create a whole bunch of new problems, and then let's fill up your day with a bunch of other stuff. And I just love that activity of just 10 companies per day. And you're making me rethink, because sometimes I thought, 300 companies, 500 people were like overwhelmed by it. And we started doing like, well, add 10 a week, or add 10 a day, and just break that down. But that shipping away process is integral. And those little gains. And I think we have a world and a society that's so like home run or bust. Yeah. That people undervalue just a little progress every day. You don't this have to be like a biohacking or fasting or some crazy 300 cold call. Like, none of that stuff. Just literally the basics a little bit every single day can get you like a long way.
Yeah, I have learned it, and Justin is a phenomenal leader, when it comes to that aspect.
Yeah.
He's a huge proponent of keeping track of everything. And the one thing I like to tell my people, because we literally have all the tools to find anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
But I encourage them not to use the tools as much. Right. Because especially with the 10 leads that I tell them, you're not trying to close a deal on the first call. Like, with those 10 new clients, all you're doing is just, at least you got to look up the phone number, right? And just call into the organization and find out who your point of contact is. Who is the HR director, depending on the size of the organization? Who is the CEO? Who's the COO? The smaller organizations, like the ones that we work with, usually the CEO and the COO, know the pain of the open position, so you can talk to them. But they could easily jump on one of the platforms that we have and track down that information in about 35 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. But there's something about phone skills, right, that cannot be learned when you just have everything that you need at your fingertips, right? So that's why I try to encourage everybody, don't look for all the information that you need. Hop on the phone, like, talk to the gatekeeper for a couple of minutes, make a friend, tell them who you are, tell them why you're calling, right? And then ask for the email of the person that you're trying to get in touch with. Because usually what happens is, if you do this business long enough, right, you're going to end up talking to the same person, 3 or 4 times, because that's, you're probably going to need to call into this place 7, 8 times,
Yeah.
before you actually get to the person. And it's usually going to be the same person that's answering to the phone. So sometimes it's just nice to, I use the term make a friend loosely, but just somebody that you can say, hey, Clark, hey, man, it's Pete from Titan Placement Group. I'm looking to talk with Susie. Is she available? No, she's not available. She's in a meeting right now,
Yeah,
right?
one of those.
They're always in a meeting.
Yeah.
But it can be a pleasant conversation, right? And it just gives you the opportunity just to have intelligent conversations with people without sounding so forceful, right? So recruiter-ish, right? Which can happen sometimes. It just enters the human element.
Yeah, not, type placement group. We do this and that, this and that. We would love to work on your next role. Can I talk to Susie? One of those.
That's
Yeah.
never worked.
0% success rate. Yeah,
No, but people still do it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, classic. Classic. Hey, been there, done that, right? It's so. Fast forward.
Yeah.
When did you guys make your first placement? When did that first invoice get paid?
Oh.
How long did it take?
Man, I don't have an exact answer, but I will tell you it was not long.
Yeah.
Right. It was within the first couple weeks.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, we got busy day 2. We had that list of companies up, and Justin, Gary, and I, we are phone people. Right. So it just didn't take long for us to get the first agreement signed. That immediately just sourced a whole bunch of candidates, found a few people, got them into the process, and we had a placement. And just a couple weeks later, there was a check in the mail.
That's perfect. I mean, and that's about as quick of a placement as you can get when you're starting out.
Yeah.
Like 6 months, maybe say 7 months to getting paid, 6.5, 7 months. So for those listening, like I always tell people, give yourself at least 6 months. And that's if you don't have a non-compete, right? And maybe newer, really haven't done this before, but you guys had sold, run desks, like sold a lot before. For those types of people, typically, like you guys, it could be quicker, yet you still built up a runway. So for those, if you're listening, you don't have experience, you don't have sales experience, but maybe you were internal or corporate, like give yourself that 6 to 12 months to get reps, get those sales reps. You might get there quicker, but that's one of the things that I've seen, like unless you're willing to really go all out and have that plan, have the hustle and have the savvy and already have the reps, like it could take a little bit of time.
And I really appreciate you clarifying that, because you are correct, right? We were 3 very seasoned recruiters, right? This is old hand for us, right? We didn't really need to do we didn't need to trade. I just needed a phone, right, and a computer, and so there was definitely a differentiator in there, but you're 100% correct, Clark. For new recruiters, right? And we're experiencing this now. And I say that exact same thing when we bring on another new recruiter. And we just recently, we have 3, 1, 2, 3, right? Yeah, you're right. The average run up time, is right around 6 months. It's a little bit faster for us in our niche. But I definitely tell them 4 months. Right, because there's
that focus is key. It expedites, right, the learning curve.
It does.
Your focus, and you can make a match, right? And I'll let you talk.
No, it's cool. It's fine because you're right on. But the slight difference for us, I think, that we're able to turn around just a little bit quicker is right because we've got a smooth runway for these people.
Yeah.
Right. We tell them what to do, who to call. And matter of fact, even for the new recruiters, once we know that they have the script kind of memorized, and we show them, and then we kind of talk about, hey, we're going to give you this nursing job to work on, right? If you get a nurse on the phone, this is what you're going to ask them to make sure that they're interested, qualified, and available. We have screening questions that are in chronological order. You just need to ask them this, depending on what this answer is, you go there. So we've made it a very simple process, but as they start to grow, right, they're starting to look for that that steady, of getting candidates in, getting hires, getting the invoices back, getting the check. That process definitely takes about 6 months, because there's something about, no matter how well we have put together the training for everybody, there's just, and I know you can identify with, there's just something that I tell everybody, I'm very, very clear, that about week 6, right, you're going to want to quit. Right, because it's not going the way that you think it should go. You're doing everything that we tell you to do, and yes, you've made 2 placements. You've gotten a paycheck. You've gotten a commission check, right? But there's something about the 6-month mark, right? And what I tell all my people is, like, the dam just breaks, where you're not pulling your hair anymore. It doesn't feel like a struggle. I wish I could still identify what it is. I still haven't figured it out. But the best analogy I've ever been able to come up with is, it just, the dam breaks and it doesn't feel like a struggle anymore, because all of the moving parts within recruiting just start to flow, if that makes any sense.
It makes total sense. And the first 6 months, it's all because there's how many hundreds of or thousands of scenarios have you and I each gone through in our recruiting? You've been recruiting how long now?
10 years.
And I started in 2013. Thousands of different scenarios by now. The mental energy it takes, if you want to be a great recruiter, to be intentional about each of those interactions and to learn how to communicate with people. I think for me in the beginning, it was, I'm dealing with people's livelihood here. Like, I have to take this seriously. I have to craft this message and all that. Or, oh, I didn't say that right. Like, I have to fix that. Like, just to get a handle on the game of whack-a-mole that is recruiting. And then before you start internalizing it and be like, okay, I know where the buttons are, right? Like, you're in the cockpit of an airplane, right? And you're just like, okay, now I know where things are. You first look at it like, what is going on here? I'm never going to learn all this. Like, that's just kind of, it just settles in. You can't shortcut the reps and you can't shortcut the time and the challenges. And a lot of, like me, I came in with preconceived notions of what I thought recruiting were. People don't lie on their resume. They won't lie to me and follow up. It's just like, like I learned that hour 2. So it just, but it's just like, for me, it was processing that. I don't know if that's similar for you or your team, but
identical.
You have to promise, it's that 6th week where you say you want to quit. It's just like, that's just real. That's why I love podcasts like this. That's why I love doing what I do and love how you guys are approaching it at Titan. It's just like, it's real and it's all right. And we're going to get there. But I think our responsibility is to bring on people that can withstand that 6-month runway in their personal life, whether I'm coaching them or whether you're bringing them to your team. But I think that's what the responsible reaction is, or response is, to all this. And just that reality.
So what every single person that is still with us right now. And there's been a couple that didn't make it. One we had to let go because we could see the writing on the wall for them.
Yeah.
But there's 2 people in particular that I'm thinking of. Like, they hit that 6-week window, right? 6-7 week. And it's so frustrating. Like, you cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I remember, I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to do that to her, but like, she's only been doing this now for 9 months, 10 months. Unbelievable. But she hit that 6-week window and I saw the potential, right? And I know what that window looks like. Like, you just want to give up because it seems insurmountable, because like you talked about, when you've got hundreds of different scenarios on any given day that could pop up, it's so mentally draining. And you're thinking, it's impossible. Like, how am I going to push through this? And I remember I went to her. I brought her in the conference room. I can't say her name, but I'm just going to say, listen, I want to tell you something right now. I know how you're feeling right now, but I promise you, if you'll just hang in there. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, you're not quitting. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I said, you're not leaving, right? You're a fantastic recruiter, but you're hitting the window right now that every single recruiter, bar none, hits. at the 6 week, 2 month mark. I said, hang in there. And I promise you, you're going to thank me for it one day. Right. And so she stayed. Right. And, for our company, for the way we have things structured. Right. Yes, we have office hours, right? Monday through Friday, but we give our people a lot of freedom, right? And she uses that freedom for other things that she does outside the office, right? And I told her, I said, listen, you're never going to be in another company to be able to make the money that you're making right now, have as much freedom to do the things that you actually love outside of this office. And I knew that about her because I knew she loved those things. And I knew there was nowhere else she was going to make the kind of money that she's making right now to be able to provide herself with that. And, a couple months, she gave me a wink. She was like, you're right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, listen, and I think, too, Clark, every single recruiter, bar none, that has pushed through and stayed the course is living phenomenal lives right now.
They really are. I actually just had a call right before we started recording from a client. Joined 3 months ago for 3 months of one-on-one. Started as very similar. A year of a non-compete, so we took a break. Had the runway, planned out the business, launched in March, the day after the non-compete was up, and has been at it. Brought on 6 clients, exclusive recs, has just been working through. Thought he was going to get the first placement a few weeks ago, right? That 2-month mark, and I could tell. I heard from him a little less, that 6 to 8 week mark, right? He was like all in. The first 6 weeks he did everything. It was the fastest implementer I've ever seen in my life in this program. And he just called me, he goes, 25K in the door, right? Like,
nice,
first place,
nice.
3-month mark. Like, it's just him, right? It's the grind. I was just like, yes. And this guy, he is a killer already. Same thing. Had the sales experience, the billing, very similar, but that non-compete and restarting that momentum a year later, right? And getting that going. And he's active, on the phones, doing in-person meetings, everything else. He's very old school in that sense, but with the digital tools as well. And it's just like, he just stuck it through. And he had no choice, right? He had a runway. He was going to do it. But even when you're going to stick with it, there's just something about that point, right? When you're doing a new venture, it's just like, it's just worth reiterating. It's worth saying it out loud. Like, if this is a big part of this podcast, is just stay with it and be consistent. Like, trust the process. And I had to scold someone yesterday that bought the course, and I was like, stop switching niches and verticals. Stay with it and go do the work. Go make the calls. Like, get the work done, man. You're overthinking and you're underworking. Like, go make it happen. And he's like, will do. And I'm like, all right, well, we'll see what happens. But it's a big, it's just, that's the left or the right. That's the fork in the road, man. It really is.
Yeah, you said something that I wanted to touch on, man. It's so important, right? You have to find a niche and stay in it, right? Because there's so much competition out there. The hiring managers, that I'm trying to get in touch with, that every other recruiter in every specialty and every niche, no matter if it's IT, healthcare, whatever, right? These people that we're actually trying to get in touch with are getting voicemails and emails, all kinds of crazy stuff, right? In order to separate yourself from that, right, you have to know what you're talking about, right? You can fake it a little bit, but at the end of the day, when you get that person on the phone, you're going to have to know what you're talking about. So, and the only way to get there is you have to know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Right?
Funny how that works. And you can't
so
be like,
that's why,
hold on, let me ask AI before I answer this.
Right.
When you're on the phone. Yeah.
Well, listen, I just brought a new client on, community nonprofit in Ohio. I'd been trying to get in touch with them for a while. Like, I shot an email to the CEO, which happens a lot, right? You send a voicemail to the CEO, email, whatever. Your CEO feels the pain. She shoots it down the line. He shoots it down the line. And then before you know it, I am on a call with the COO, right? To talk about our services and what they have going on. And another thing that we implement that is by far like one of our biggest value points that we bring to the table is we have what's called an intake form, right? So in order to make sure that we don't do what you talked about earlier, which everybody wants to do when they get on the phone, they just want to vomit all over the person on the other phone of how great I am, how great we are. We can fill your positions in 30 days and blah, 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 right? They've heard it over and over,
Yeah.
over and over, over.
It's like a frat pledge at their first party. I mean, it's just like, oh, here we go again. We got the rookie,
So and so we use a specific form when we get on the phone, and nobody deviates from it. Not me, not Gary, not Justin. Right? They are specific questions, and the reason for those questions is so we ask the client questions about their organizations, their open positions. How are they getting the positions? How have they been recruiting? How have they been getting the positions filled? What do they perceive to be the roadblock? Why can't they find candidates on their own? Right? What is their turnover rate? Right? Do they know what that is? Like, and sometimes that's a hard question to ask, but it's an important question.
Yeah.
Right? Because if they have a high turnover rate, we need to explore that a little bit, right? Are they using recruiters? Have you used recruiters previously? What was your experience, right? And the idea behind that is to not do what you said, right? Not to puke all over them, right? But more importantly, it's to separate ourselves from all the other people that I know are calling in there, vomiting all over themselves, right? And so when we got done with the call, she said to me, I told her the fee, right? No big deal, even though it may seem high to some people. But she goes, I just wanted to let you know something. She goes, I've had a phone call with 2 other recruiting firms before this one. And she said, neither of them asked any questions about us.
That's the competition, folks.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying. That's your competition. Right. And I'm telling you, the competition is messing it up.
Yeah.
Right. But like I said, it just goes down to processes and procedures and how we structure things so we can be successful.
I love it. And we teach the same thing, intake form. I've had one, the first 5 questions. Why is this position open? How long has it been open? What's the start date? What happens if you don't fill the position by then? Who else is working on this? Right. Yep. And those are just quickly, and then you can, pivot. Just those alone, you could take up an hour sometimes.
Yes.
They're talking. And it's like, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to be in a rush to get to all the answers. Like, embrace the fact that you're on the call, you're in it, be in it with them, because if you got to think, if a rec is going to close and within 2 weeks, like it did for you guys when you first started, that pain, that urgency had to have been sky high, like 100 out of 10 for that client to move that quickly for the right candidate. Like, that's what you're looking for. And if you're in that mode, let them feel that pain with you, and also realize like you are the solution too. Right? Like, that's why it's so important not to just vomit about you and like, what's the pay range and can you bump up the compensation and all that. Just like, be in it first and get them comfortable. It's such a powerful foundation for the partnership, for everything else that you can allow to come after that.
Well, great point. And so the one, another thing, that we talk about often in our office, right? If you can actually get the hiring manager, CEO, COO, whoever, right, is obviously making the decisions for the company whether or not to deal with a recruiting company. If you can get them to take time out of their day to hop on a phone call with you or a Zoom call, whichever it is, right? At that point, right there, they want to give you some money for your help. So if you can't convey your value well enough to get them to say, yes, we would love to move forward with you, right? Then we need to talk about the call.
Yeah.
Right. Because at somewhere in it doesn't happen every time, but if you do it well, right? If you really, like you said, if you really interact with the person, whoever the hiring manager is, right? If you've conveyed your value well enough, there's no reason that you should get off the call with, well, I'll talk to the CEO and we'll get back with you in a week.
Yeah.
That really shouldn't happen.
Yeah. It's it's a great point. And if it is happening, you might not, again, not have the right niche. It might not be the right person, the right manager. I mean, there could be so many different things. You didn't ask questions
Right.
about them. Yeah.
What you want to do is just, you want to look at it.
Yeah.
You want to look at, hey, am I asking the right questions? Am I conveying the right value?
Yeah.
Did I know about their market? Did I find out? Like, and we ask them, we just fall short of taking a complete job order on the phone with them.
Yeah.
Like, what are you paying for this licensed clinical social worker? What are the hours? Right. This is before we find anything. It's just during the call. It's just a conversation. Hey, Clark,
Yeah.
what are you paying your licensed clinical social workers? Oh, $73,000 a year. Oh, well, listen, just wanted to let you know, like, one of the values of working with us is, like, I have access to Indeed analytics, right? And I already have it pulled up right here. Did you know that your competitors 30 miles down the street are paying $82,000 a year? Right. So we convey that information to them. It's just another point. It's just another opportunity to let them know that we actually know what we're talking about.
It's so good.
That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to get them. Listen, we know that their salary ranges are their salary ranges. Very rarely will they move them up for us. But the value that I bring is, like, that guy on the other phone, that girl on the other phone has to be thinking, this guy Pete with Titan, he's not just some regular recruiter. Like, he's asking me all kinds of questions. He must know what he's doing.
You could always leave a lasting impression with just that approach. And that's how, if imagine doing that 5 times a week, that's 250 times in a year, right? Like, you can't get 5 new clients out of that, 10 new clients. If you leave that many amazing impressions of, like, that's unlike any other recruiter I've gone to. Like, just think
Right.
about it that way before putting all the pressure of closing the deal on yourself. You
Yeah.
just do that. Like, it's just common sense is a learned trait, but it becomes common sense when you kind of reframe it that way. It's just like, wow, I could do that in my niche, and if I just own it. And that's how you become known. And imagine the content you can create from it and all that other good stuff. Not to mention the money just from the placements. But
And you're right, because you're not going to close every deal, right? That's not the intention. The intention is, like you said, leave a lasting impression. And if that phone call isn't the right opportunity, here's what will happen. When the pain gets great enough and they decide that they're actually willing to work with a firm to get these placements made, they're calling me.
And they move quick at that point.
Yes.
Right? And they respect you more, I'm sure, because you didn't jump through hoops when there was no hoop to jump through.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the issue too. We can do all this stuff. Why didn't they get back to me? When's the start date? I don't know. Oh, well, you don't know. They could need someone by New Year's for all you know, right? That's why they're not moving and they're just doing their due diligence or whatever.
Well, I think it goes back to, like, what you said earlier. Like, well, this is one thing that I learned a few years ago. It was a hard lesson, right? The recruiting industry is 100% a relationship business, right? You just build relationships. You just make friends along the way, right? And maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months, maybe, who knows, maybe even 2 years goes by.
Yeah.
And this CEO, whoever I talked to, that I just had a nice conversation, I asked them a bunch of questions about their opportunities, told them what we do, but they still decide, you know what, we're just not ready yet. We're still going to try to weather this storm on our own. Then maybe a year and a half later, they call me. That's just the way recruiting is. Recruiting is all about timing on both ends of the spectrum.
Exactly. And I love that you're very comfortable with that because you have enough volume in your outreach and enough conversations that you allow yourself to be comfortable in that moment. I know that alone has power with prospects. Like, oh, you don't have to have my business right now. I can, and people reveal more when they realize that about you. And it's amazing the intel that you can get when people realize that you're not just trying to drain their wallets. That you actually want to see if you can solve a problem first and then get paid for it.
Yeah.
But like it's such a power shift, and man, it saves so much time in prospecting and sales in the long run.